Hey there, I am Pronger Faulkner. I'm here with Lisa-Marie Haymour to talk about our collaboration book called Absolute Will, which was released in October 2021. Lisa-Marie and I have known each other for, she's probably going to kill me for saying this, 31 years.
I thought it was longer than that.
I think 31 years is what I figured. I had actually moved across Canada and started in a new high school when I was halfway through grade 11. And when high school cliques are already well established, and yet Lisa-Marie was welcoming and sweet and kind. So thank you for so many years of friendship and for being here today, Lisa-Marie.
Well, thanks for having me. And I thank you for the many years of friendship.
So the idea for this collaboration came to me earlier this year, actually back in January, when I was still working on my first book, and I kept allowing myself to get distracted with other things on my to-do list, which you know a lot about.
Yeah.
And one of which was trying to come up with a fundraising idea for a project that my fiance Mike and I want to do in Nicaragua. And eventually, months later, the urge to create an inspirational collaboration got so strong that I knew I needed to get going on it. I really wanted women from as many countries around the world as possible to make this a global effort of inspiring others. And I really wanted every story to have a health and a willpower aspect to it. So when the idea came to me that a book collaboration would also be a perfect way to fundraise, this book suddenly became my #1 priority to make it happen by the end of the year. So all of the profits from the author entry fees and the sales through the first month of our launch are going towards Mike and I building a house for a family in Nicaragua who doesn't have a home of their own. And I'm so thrilled that we have 21 authors in this book, me and Lisa-Marie and 19 other amazing women from 7 countries around the world. Our authors are from Canada, the United Kingdom, the United Arab Emirates, the United States, Australia, South Africa, and Bulgaria. And together we are sharing our personal, vulnerable, insightful, true stories of willpower when facing emotional and mental health crises, physical injuries, and disease. Now, this book is self-published and self-promoted by all of our authors, not done through a traditional publishing house. It's been a grassroots effort, which makes what we've done with it so far all the more incredible. My first book became a bestseller in 2 categories, so I was pretty sure that we could do it with absolute will. Plus, like after I tweaked some of my marketing strategies, and that we would have a built-in book launch team with all 21 of us sharing about it. What I didn't expect, and I know that most of the other authors also didn't expect, is that we would hit #1 bestseller in 9 categories across 3 countries, Canada, the US, and Australia. And we also hit #1 new release in 31 categories across 4 countries, Canada, the US, Australia, and the UK. And that's just in the first few weeks after the book went live on Amazon. It's just remarkable.
It's unbelievable.
It really is. And the reviews so far that are coming in now on this book say that these stories are raw, real, sensitive, thought-provoking, heartwarming, life-changing, well-written, and that this book is a fantastic read. The stories are truly inspiring. Any reader can relate to these stories on some level. You feel a personal connection to each of the writer's journeys, and that this book has given so much hope to others. These are all direct quotes from the reviews on Amazon. Lisa-Marie's chapter is called Pretty Little Mess, Chapter 8 in Absolute Will. So welcome, Lisa-Marie. I am so thrilled to have you here.
I am so thrilled to be here, finally seeing you after all these years.
Yes. So yes, we are halfway across the country from each other in Canada. And yeah, so tell everyone a little bit about who you are and where you're from and what your chapter in Absolute Will is about.
So, like Joanne said, we've known each other for 31 plus years. I'm originally from a small town on Vancouver Island called Duncan, and that's where Joanne faithfully had moved to. And yeah, so we started a friendship right away. I knew that we were kindred spirits, and we went through a lot of the same issues in childhood and, you know, dealing with teenage issues and stuff like that. And I had a really good friend in her. And then, of course, as everything happens, we move away and things change. And so when I saw that she had written the book, it was really inspiring to me. So, so I've always wanted to write, even though I've been a hairstylist for 31 plus years. It's always been kind of on the back burner. So this was a great opportunity. I really enjoyed that. I'm always striving to move forward in education in hair. So I thought, why not do something a little different and switch it up and do something that I've always wanted to do. So that's why I started writing the chapter that I did. And I did so because a few different reasons. One of the biggest reasons was the name of the book. Joanne and I went back and forth. I was like, gonna write it as My Fibro Journey. And this is all more about the reason why I have fibromyalgia and what transpired in the beginning to me having fibromyalgia, TMJ, and trigeminal neuralgia. And in one of the parts of the chapter, I put down, sometimes I'm just a pretty little mess, like we all are. And she's like, oh, that's perfect, put that. So that's why it's named Pretty Little Mess. And it's basically an insight to my story of what truly happened that precipitated why I have the conditions that I do. So, yeah.
So if we can dig a little deeper into that, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about what you went through, you know,
Yeah.
and just, you know, what really kind of started everything, and then what you've been dealing with since then?
So, well, I think, you know, Joanne had come to me and said, you know, I'm writing this book and I'm doing a collaboration. Do you want to be a part of it? And immediately I was like, yes. You know, I had read her other book and I was inspired by her. And it's weird because knowing her as the teenage girl that I grew up with, it was different. You know, we'd been through the same issues, the same traumas, almost literally verbatim. So for me, it was like, okay, you know, she's writing insight on how she has overcome. And I have a lot of clients daily that say to me, wow, like, you don't even look like you're sick. And how do you have 20 migraines a month? And to that, in the beginning, years ago, I would just say, oh, I suffered an injury. You know, I would leave it as an open statement, basically letting them fill in the blanks. You know, I would never outright say I was abused. I would say, oh, I have an injury. So then that would lead them to believe that I was in some sort of car accident. I still went through a lot of anxiety talking about it. I went through a lot of self-guilt and being ashamed, thinking that, you know, this can't be my story. You know, I wanted more for my life than this. And I wanted more for my son and his life than this. So for me, it was really hard when I really wanted to do this, but it was very difficult putting pen to paper, and it was so different than what I was anticipating. But I figured, you know, going through what I went through from an early age with endometriosis and IBS, dealing with all of that, then dealing with this abusive marriage, and now dealing with the loss of a breast and the loss of my uterus, I felt like I wasn't even a true woman anymore. And the husband that I had, who at the time I thought was my one true love. I mean, I had a child with him. We had a house together. We got married. I wanted so badly to believe that this was my happily ever after. And I was so willing to overlook the abuse because of it, because I thought, no, this is my life. This is my plot in life, and I'm going to change him, and he's going to be a better person because of me. And that really, you know, while I was writing this, it really brought a different change into how I looked at my life and how I looked at what happened. And I just went, wait a second, like, this is not normal. And it's not normal to just tell people a lie of what has actually happened, because I don't want to confront about it. I don't want to be talking about it. And it wasn't until recently that I've been telling clients, well, my ex-husband elbowed me in the back of the skull, you know, compressing the trigeminal nerve, which is ultimately your fifth cranial nerve, is mostly responsible for your sensory movements, motions, and feelings from your face to your brain. So I look normal on the outside, but what's going on the inside in this trigeminal nerve area that runs all the way through here, you're going through this sensory misfire basically, and your body is just shutting down. So you've got a multitude of different things that are all kind of happening together. So I've got the trifecta. I've got trigeminal neuralgia. I've got, you know, the migraines. I've got, you know, TMJ and fibromyalgia, all linking it in together as one big ball. And it's like a network of like traumatic experiences all rolled into one. So it's constant pain every day. So I wanted to share my story and tell people, like, this is what's going on, because unfortunately, you know, talking with clients, and I have a lot of clients who are nurses and doctors, and, you know, they were telling me, unfortunately, 21 years later, it's still the same. It's basically, unless a woman is dead on arrival or has a knife sticking out of her, or a gunshot wound, they really look at it as domestic violence and domestic abuse cases, as a he said, she said situation. And that's it. They kind of, not really, they don't want to say it, but they wash their hands of it, because they don't know what happens behind closed doors, and nobody really does. And I've always been a firm believer of, there's his side of the story, there's her side of the story, and there's somewhere in between where the real truth is. Unfortunately, in this chapter that I wrote, it was the real truth, and it was exactly what had happened and transpired that night. And I'll never forget it. So I wanted to share it so that other women don't feel ashamed or embarrassed like I was to share. Now that you're seeing all this Me Too movement and women sharing their stories, it really made me resonate with that and just say, you know what do I have to lose? Why not? If this story, if at least my story can share, if I share it with somebody, at least one person can be saved from this, or one person doesn't feel so alone, that's all that makes me happy.
That's amazing.
So yeah, so.
And so many women stay, pardon?
That's the long version of it.
Well, and I think you're so brave for telling this story, because you've been holding it in for a long time. And like you said, you've been kind of, you know, like peddling around the issue of this was, glossing over the fact that somebody did this to you. Yeah. And yet you have such an incredible mindset where you're not, you know, you're not thinking of yourself as a victim. You're not pointing fingers and blaming, and you're just, you know, trying to make the best of what you have going on in your life. And I just think that's incredible. So I also think it's incredible that you're bringing awareness to abuse, because too many women stay past the point that we should ever stay. And I mean, like I've been in some of those relationships myself where, you know, just because you're still alive doesn't mean it's an amazing relationship, right? It's there may come a day where it gets too dangerous, and you are an example of what can happen when things explode. And you know, you're living with that now permanently forever. So I really commend you for bringing this to everyone's awareness, and, you know, just bringing it into light, and, you know, talking more about it, and hopefully, you know, helping as many women as you can. And
yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I remember when we were talking and you had said, you know, he tried to kill you, and I immediately was like, oh, no, he didn't try to kill me. And then I went, wait a second. Yeah, he did. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that he didn't elbow me straight in the spinal column, it went more over to where the trigeminal nerve is on the left-hand side, I would have a lot more than just numbness and tingling every day on the left-hand side of my face and my brain. I would have a lot more to worry about than just having my migraines all the time. You know, I couldn't even imagine, you know, like the doctor had said in the ER that the force of the elbow to the base of the skull was like basically at 100 kilometers per hour, whatever that is in our metric system. But yeah, it was just, you know, enough that you would have such a visible force to the back of the skull where, you know, the minute that I awoke from the concussion, everything looked like it was so far away. Like it was a black and white movie in slow motion. So it was very hard to take in, you know. So I'm actually kind of glad that I did it now. At the time when I was writing and I was going through a lot of traumatic experiences, I wasn't glad at the time, but I was glad that, you know, because now you're reliving it. Now all of a sudden you're reliving that trauma all over again, which I didn't think was actually going to be a thing.
So let's talk about your writing. Writing seems to bring out different experiences for different people. So how was the actual process of writing for you? And did anything surprise you as you were writing your chapter?
Yes. So the writing process, I thought in the beginning was going to be easy. I would just jotted down notes. I'm like, okay, I've got this. I had my notepad because of course I don't do anything on the computer. I do everything with notepad, as Joanne got to witness while I was in my RV. And I had to send her 20 different photos of my actual chapter. So yeah, it was awful. Poor Joanne. She's got the heart of a saint.
I had not considered that people didn't write on the computer. So I mean, it was a good learning experience for me too. So it was all good.
Oh, my husband mocks me all the time that it takes me half an hour just to write out a simple little text message to him. So yeah, so it was tough, but I was writing everything out. I thought that I was doing really good and I had all these notes, because when you're doing everything in note form and point form, you're not really explaining everything. And what's weird for me is I find I can talk to clients now. Over the last few years, I've really gotten to be able to talk to clients and talk to other people and tell them what happened. But writing it down and talking about it, I found out very fast that they're two different things. So it was really actually quite traumatic for me. I enjoyed writing, and I've always enjoyed writing, and I've always wanted to write my own book. But the actual process of reliving all that trauma, I literally, like I said before, felt like I was that 27-year-old girl all over again, reliving the fact that I had no breast, no uterus, I had no love of my life. I was now a single mom, trying to do everything on my own, going through breast reconstruction surgeries, you know, just knowing that I'll never be able to have a child again. Like it was, plus going through all of the other traumatic, you know, post-concussion syndrome issues that I was going through. It was very hard. So now I'm reliving all of this all over again. That was really hard to take. I did not expect the onslaught of emotions that I was going to feel, and the roller coaster of emotions that was going to be up and down constantly. As you well know, some of the times I could only video chat what I needed to say out. I could not even say it. Even, you know, in the beginning process, like my chapter was over 6,500 words, and we're only supposed to have 2,000. So, and even after I had gone through, you know, editing and cutting out a lot of the stuff that maybe I could put into a different chapter or a different book, and started really getting down to the nitty gritty, even after that third time of rewriting, you had said to me, it seems like you're really detached, like you're glossing over everything. And immediately I was like, oh, yes, I am, because I don't want to deal with it again. And it really sent me into a tailspin. So, I think for me, I would definitely do this again 100%. I definitely want to do either my own book or another collaboration. But yeah, I was not prepared for the onslaught of emotions that came. But I'm glad that I did it. And I'm glad that I went through that. Because I just recently went through a lot of struggles with that personally. Here I thought that I had dealt with it, going through different therapies. I had put my son in therapy. I put myself in therapy. I put us both together in therapy. I put him in therapy with his dad. I tried to get his dad to be active in therapy. It didn't work. But, I'd gone through all this therapy, spent all these, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours of therapy for what, to now relive it, thinking that I had dealt with it. I had forgiven him. I had moved on. Clearly, that was not the case. Clearly, I was still harboring some type of resentment or upset or confused feelings. I was conflicted. Here's a person who I've forgiven, and now all of a sudden I'm re-hating him all over again. And that to me was just like, whoa, wait, what's going on? And my biggest thing that freaked me out through this whole writing process, and you remember, I just did not want my son's name to be attached to this. I didn't want, my ex-husband's name to be attached to it. I was so petrified and so worried that he would come after me legally, that it would maybe bring out some sort of traumatic memory that my son had that would just put him into a tailspin. But, it was tough. And I usually think of writing as very cathartic, and it can be, but mine had to be delayed catharticism. Like I had to actually go through all of that all over again. And I mean, every night I was crying. I would, relive all the trauma. And, I had a hard time letting my husband come near me or touch me. I went through everything all over again. And, my husband, being the saint that he is, he let me go through it and dealt with everything, and let me just go through my emotions. And he didn't call me a crazy lady, or if he did, I didn't hear. But he dealt with it with me, which was really good, because not a lot of people have that support system. And that's another reason why I wanted to write this, is that there's a lot of things that you Google about fibromyalgia, about lupus and everything, and they're all documented proof of doctors, relaying their evidence. It's not a story on how somebody has made it through. And that to me resonates a lot more than what doctors have to say. I mean, I'm not saying that doctors don't have a place in this world for that, but I just feel like people who are dealing with these issues need to have somebody that they can relate to. And that's another reason why I wrote the chapter. Even though I went through all that trauma, I'm glad I did. In the last 65 days, I had 60 migraines. I ended up, unfortunately, having to be put back on pills for a short time because I had a relapse with the trigeminal neuralgia and the fibromyalgia. I just recently saw a new neurologist, so he's getting me on track. So, at first I kind of felt like a failure, because here I am going back onto pills when I just wrote a chapter about no pills. But I think I've had to go through all of that. And a lot of this, I believe, is a release of emotions that I was trapping deep down and not allowing myself to tap into, which I think the writing process really helped.
Wow, that's amazing. And you haven't kept it from your son, right? You guys had a conversation.
we had a conversation, Thanksgiving, we had a conversation for a good hour and a half. And I think I almost went into not a depression, but a deeper, sense of getting better and that catharticism, because he told me after 21 years, he's 29 now. I thought for sure that he didn't remember anything and that I had done so well at hiding it from him. And he actually told me that he remembered everything. He's like, Mom, I know that you've tried to protect me, but I remember everything. And I remember what Dad did that morning. And I remember all the other times. And he said, I remember you vomiting in the bathroom, having really bad migraines all the time. And you'd come out of the bathroom and be like, okay, sweetheart, what are we going to have for breakfast? Like, I just hide it from him so much. I went with my grandmother, my mom's mom, her sayings, always have a smile on your face. And there was a saying that she had on her wall, and it was, it takes 65 facial muscles to frown and only 12 to smile. So you do the math. And the best way to avoid a wrinkle is to smile. So that's what I did throughout the entire whole 21 years. I smiled, I went through it, I barely talked about it. And then when I did talk about it, I kind of, like you said, I just glossed over the truth. I just did a very basic, until one day when I was telling a client and she was asking me about my migraines, and I said, oh yeah, she goes, how did that happen? And I said, oh, my ex-husband elbowed me in the back of the skull. And she just went, and she turned around and she just held my hands and hugged me. And she's like, I'm so sorry for what you went through. And I just started breaking out into tears. And I just thought, I don't do this normally. Like, normally it's all about the client, it's all about their hair and how they feel. And here she is consoling me and I'm crying. And I'm just like, it just came out of nowhere. Wow. So a lot of my clients have been very supportive with this. They have been very great they're all showing it around. I've got my book here.
Awesome.
They all want to get a copy and they want me to sign it.
Nice.
On your appointment. So I feel like a rock star.
That's awesome.
But it's nice. It's nice that we're actually resonating with people. And I thought, oh, one or two people will read it, but I actually just had a girlfriend of ours message me on Facebook the other day and say wonderful things about the book and how she loved my chapter and it was inspiring. And I was like, what? I inspired her? Like, it just, awesome. It made me feel really good. So I'm really glad that we did this. One of the biggest reasons was getting my voice out there. And also too, the added bonus, I mean, who doesn't want to help a family in need? Like, the fact that we get to help this family in need just warms my soul. And all of my clients love it. They're like, what? Are you serious? I'm like, yeah. And so they're just, now everybody just wants to buy the book even more now because we're helping a family. Like, I love that.
That's awesome.
I know.
So you kind of touched on it, I think, a little bit, but based on this experience, do you think that you'll write your own book in the future, or will you be in another collaboration?
I got ahead of you.
Do you have actual plans? Do you think you have actual plans for a book, or is that like way off?
I do. Well, like I said, I had 6,500 words for a 2,000 word, chapter. So, yeah, I've always wanted to write my own book. And I started years and years ago writing my own book about the trials and tribulations that I had with men and how they all seem to have the same common denominator. And, I was good to look at, but I had to keep my mouth shut. And, these little things, I always got all the time. And I used to think it was funny. And, and still to this day, it is a little funny, but sometimes I would get oh, it's a good thing she's pretty, because she's not that smart, like little things like that. And, to a certain degree, when you're joking with your spouse who absolutely truly cares about you and has nothing but the best of intentions for you, when my husband jokes like that now, I take it as a joke and I know he's joking and I love it. And that's his humor with me. And that's what I fell in love with. But when you have a spouse who is belittling you constantly and nitpicking at every little thing that you do and how wrong you are, when they start to say, it's a good thing she's pretty, then that's all they think about you. And that, you know, really resonates with me. Like, I just think, oh, all these people, you know, it's really, really hard when, and I think that's why sometimes in the chapter, when I said pretty little mess, I thought, oh, should I even be saying that? Because like, you're just resonating with that, oh, she's a good thing she's pretty thing. But I don't know. I think people just need to, I don't know what I'm trying to say, Joe. We need to pause.
Well, I think the pretty little mess resonates with people because, I mean, everybody wants to say that they're a hot mess these days if things go wrong or they're just making fun of themselves. So it was a bit of a play on words, really, is what I thought when I read it in your chapter. But also the fact that you have had guys say this to you, you know, boyfriends or ex-husband, and almost use your looks against you in some way, or that's all there was to you. So I thought it was a bit of a play on words as well as ironic, because you're a whole lot more than that. So, you know, I mean, you're running multiple businesses, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you have a lot going on in your life, and I mean, it's not like you have to explain that to anyone, but there is a whole lot more than your looks. But I mean, you know, it's important, I think, to bring awareness to this. So, and it really ties into abuse and how men can use all kinds of physical attributes against their women, you know. In their relationships. Yeah.
Like, I remember one of my ex-husbands, and that sounds horrible the way I say it, one of my many, but
there weren't that
actually many. What's that?
I said there weren't that many.
No, there wasn't. But it's just funny how, you know, tying into that, you know, he would use abuse in a different form. You know, there's many types of abuse that, you know, people don't really talk about. People mostly talk about the physical abuse and the physical attributes to that, and what you can actually see. You know, some physical abuse you can't see, but there's the mental abuse. You know, there's monetary abuse, you know, hiding assets from your loved one, different types. I went through all of those, but the biggest one was always using my looks against me. So, you know, a man would be interested in me simply solely because of my looks and my physical appearance. And then we'd be dating or married, and then he would use that against me. Well, I didn't marry a Barbie doll. What do you like? What are your looks good for? Like, I don't want that. I want simple. Well, I'm in the hair and beauty industry. Like, this is how I sell in the beauty industry. This is how you met me. How do you now take what has always been basically trademarked with me through my industry to now use that against me? And I'm a horrible person because of it. So I think, you know, this chapter resonates more with the physical abuse side and the mental abuse side, but it doesn't really talk about like the other abuse where, you know, some women will just be belittled little bit by little bit, tiny little bits by little bit, and just chipping it away. And sometimes that can be even worse because it's like detrimental to your psyche. And a lot of these autoimmune disorders that us women end up getting are triggered by a fight or flight response that our body is struggling and going through. And then all of a sudden you've got all these little hidden things, you know, you're not pretty enough, you're not good enough, or you're too pretty, you should dull it down, or you need to do this, or I'm taking this money from you. All these little tiny things that these men say to us and bring us down. You know, I don't think I was ready when my husband and I got back together, I don't think I was ready for the amount of love that he has for me, because I was so used to having love, but from a distance, and, you know, only love when it suits them best. So it was really hard for me. And I think a lot of what I sort of went through, I started dealing with it right when my husband and I got back together. We were together for a short period of time. We separated for 4 years. And then we got back together. And when we got back together, it was just so all encompassing with this love, this respect. You know, somebody actually respected me. It was shocking to me. So then I go and decide, oh, I'm going to write this chapter because I'm super good with myself now. I feel great. I have no hidden, you know, animosities anymore. And then it just rears its ugly head. So yeah, that was quite interesting.
Oh my goodness. So what is your top piece of advice for someone who might be thinking they want to become a published author?
Well, I would say my top piece of advice would be prepared. Be prepared, you know, emotionally and physically for the onslaught of emotions that are going to happen. Like I said earlier, I wasn't prepared for it. And now I've been dealing with a lot of health issues since. But I think had I dealt with it years ago, would I be writing this chapter now? Would I be learning from what I'm learning from? Who knows? So I always say to people, be prepared, because I thought I was prepared and I clearly wasn't. So that would be my big takeaway from this. Be prepared. Do a lot of research, because there's a lot of things that I've been researching about trigeminal neuralgia and fibromyalgia that I thought I already knew. And now I'm reading even more. And I actually just realized that as of July of this year, that they have now recognized fibromyalgia as an autoimmune disorder. So yeah, mine stemmed from central nervous system, you know, from the trigeminal nerve and from the elbow to the base of the skull, but it actually is truly recognized now as autoimmune, which is finally something. So yeah, so I always, I don't know, I really am a firm believer of, especially now, since I've gone through this, is to be prepared. Just be prepared for those emotions. Let yourself feel those emotions, because I wasn't letting myself feel those emotions until you had told me, let yourself feel the emotions, let yourself go through it, because I was fighting against it. And then I think it was making it worse. So be prepared emotionally for that, but also be prepared physically that you might start having some, you know, sort of relapses if you do have an autoimmune disorder, or if you have a central nervous system disorder. You know, anything where our body is going back into that fight or flight mode is a really hard one to take, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Yeah. And it was, I mean, part of it too is that we had to keep kind of, the part of the purpose of the book was to draw out the emotion that each story had inside it, right? I wanted more. That was kind of my vision for the book from the beginning, is that I wanted it to be really emotional for the reader.
Yeah.
And to do that, the writer has to be really emotional. So yeah, the way that your chapter though all came together in the end, and with, you know, the submitting your snapshots of your handwritten journal pages. And then all of the voice, you know,
all 22 pages.
And then all of our voice calls back and forth, you know, just getting to what's the real, you know, the real heart of this chapter and what message you are trying to bring. And it came together so beautifully. And I think it's a fantastic chapter that really is more of a teaser for you for a future book, for sure, because there's so much more that, like you said, there's so much more that you could tell.
That's exactly right. And, you know, that's the thing that you, it's good that you mentioned that, because there was so much of the abuse that I took out. I was so scared that this would come back to bite me or to haunt me. And so I took out a lot of, the core content. And instead of glazing over, I added, like you said, like little synopsises of what's been happening, almost like a teaser, because that was all I could deal with at the time. Looking back now, after talking with my family, after talking with my son also mentioned that his dad found out somehow about the book. And
because it's all over the internet.
It's all over the internet. And so, well, I guess one of my my little cards, the cue card thingies that we did for our little teasers, was something to do with the love of my life, the father of my child, was now no longer there. And so my son's girlfriend looked at this on Facebook and went, did your dad die?
Oh.
My son was like, no, I'm pretty sure he's alive. I just left him at work. And so I think what happened was, then of course he found out about it, and his dad, said, oh, fine, no big deal. So apparently it doesn't bother him, which I'm glad. But looking back now, I think, geez, if I had just gone with my gut instinct and just put it all out there, it would be so much more powerful. But at the same time, I'd have to cut stuff somewhere because I can only have 2,000 words. So yeah, so I figured, let's do a teaser now, because I can always elaborate more in the future.
Absolutely. And a lot of what was cut out was the actual event, that
Yes.
triggered all of it. So it was
more in-depth discussion on the actual event, whereas I just kind of gave the brief interlude to the event, mainly just to protect my son, and also I think in a way to protect myself as well. But now, knowing what I know, in the future, like you said, if you don't want it to be written about you, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, that's a thing that authors love to say.
Yeah. I think it's a great quote.
We need it on a mug or something. Yeah. So what else are you up to, and what is next for you?
Oh gosh. Well, we're just busy at work right now with the salons. Trying
You
to
have
get
4?
back to some. We just sold one of them, so now we have 3. We did have 6, so now we're down to 3. Thank goodness.
Wow.
It's a lot. So 3 salons is still a lot, as well as my father-in-law having a salon as well that we pretty much take over. So that's 4 salons. So it's a lot. So I'm glad that we're sort of downsizing, and, because in the next 5 to 10 years, my husband and I want to retire. And we're still debating on the whole travel thing. During COVID, obviously everything kind of went to hell in a handbasket and nobody was traveling. So, and ironically, we had gone to Costa Rica from January 4th to the 18th of 2020. So
Wow.
just before everything kind of shut down. And we were there to look at vacation rentals to buy, because we were thinking, well, let's have a house in Costa Rica and you can live there year round. And, so we kind of started toying around with the idea like, oh yeah, we're going to have this vacation property, we're going to rent it out and we're going to live there. And then when we retire, that's it. And then COVID happened. So yeah, I'm kind of glad we didn't buy anything, because then we'd be stuck on the line for 2 mortgages right now. So that kind of made us change our whole aspect, like what do we want to do in the future now as far as travel. So my husband's lifelong dream has been to own the A-Team van.
No.
I know. He's always wanted to have the A-Team van and literally drive around a corner with the windows rolled down with the A-Team theme song in the background.
Okay, you need to make sure you get that recorded.
Well, right. So now I kind of gave him the best of both worlds. We've got the A-team van wrapped up in a motorhome. So
There you go.
we just can't go around corners really fast with the windows rolled down.
All the dishes will fall out.
Right? So yeah, and of course, you know, my husband, he just didn't want to do anything small. We've got a 35-foot big live-in motorhome with a big diesel engine. So yeah, that's been fun. So now, you know, had you asked me, or any of my clients asked me 5 years ago, oh, would you love to live in an RV? I would have been like, absolutely not. Nope, not happening. Now I can see myself living in an RV. So we have been toying around with the idea, you know, flipping back and forth. Should we buy a place somewhere like Big Corn Island, you know, Costa Rica, or should we buy a bigger motorhome with more slide outs and newer and just travel around the world? So that's up for debate.
That's a pretty exciting thing to be debating about, though. So that's
right?
Super cool. Yeah.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah. And then my son, 29 years old, he's been with his girlfriend for 3.5 years. So it looks like 2 of his best friends just got married. One of them just had a baby or is having a baby. So yeah, so it looks like he's going to be getting married soon and we'll have grandbabies on the way. So
awesome. That's exciting.
And then I can't think of anything else. I mean, we have our fur babies that and this is the other thing too with the RV. It's great because you can take your fur babies with you and you don't have to spend a fortune on kenneling them or having somebody stay at the house, right?
Absolutely.
So, and we have 3 cats and 2 dogs. So
the whole traveling family. That's awesome. Oh my goodness. Well, if you have enjoyed getting to know more about Lisa-Marie and want to connect with her, you can find her on Instagram and Facebook under her name, Lisa-Marie Haymour. Lisa-Marie, thank you so much for being in this collaboration and for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Your inner strength is incredible, and you are such an inspiration for courageously and vulnerably sharing what you've been going through and dealing with and holding in for so many years. And I'm so honored that you chose to share your story in absolute will.
Well, I am so honored that you had me. And my biggest thing to kind of give to anybody is just to think positive. Think as positive as you can, because what happens today, you know, can change tomorrow. So what works for me today might not work for me tomorrow, but you always got to think positive. So, and I always wish everybody peace, light, and love.
I love that. It's been awesome talking to you. Thank you so much.
It's been so good talking with you. Thank you so much, Joe.
Bye.
Bye.